Hi YouTube, we're back with the Airbus A380. And yesterday where we left off, we were making adapters so that we could fly this with two separate packs. Or we could fly it with one single pack. And the only thing that concerned me about that whole application was the fact that I may actually have to have my negative wire tied together somewhere to keep the common the same. Not the positive wire, because then that, you can just use a parallel connector into this. But I'm not 100% sure if that's going to be an issue. If it becomes an issue, I'm going to build an adapter that takes the negative from here and it goes to here, or something to that extent. I may also build a little XT adapter that goes in between these. But also, just wanted to tell you, I got to get the EDFs installed today, so that's going to be kind of our next thing. We can't really wire this up until we have the EDFs on, so we know where the wires go. So that's going to be our next step. I'll get those going next. Okay, so I've got a tape gun here, and you're probably wondering what the heck that's for. Well, we're going to use the tape gun to help us to hold the wires in as we install these in the wings. Okay? So, obviously the longer wires are going to go to the outboard portion. You see how these both have the same cut? Well, the same is true on the other side. So we're going to deal with whatever wing that ends up being. We'll get these installed first. We're going to put mucilage on here, which I affectionately call pops in your hand, not in your mouth. And here's a part number. There you go. Okay. And this stuff does dry out, so if you know you're not going to use it very much, get the small. This is the large size. It's cheap. And I really like it. It works great. So obviously in this application we have to next flip the thing over. The landing gear don't need to be installed, and I actually want to get a pillow to set that on. Okay, so I got a pillow to set this on. Just helps with superficial damage. Okay, so we can tell which side these are going to go on by just lining them up and trying to fit them in the slot. As you can see, we got the one servo wire that's going out to the aileron. And you see how it's kind of twisted and turned and stuff? I have a little piece of tape in here that's just temporarily holding it down. It'd be nice to have them all flat. So ultimately, what I want to do is I'm going to take a small piece of this tape. Now remember, this is temporary. And I just want to have a bit of a channel. Again, totally temporary, so it doesn't need to be pretty. But the idea here is, and that might have been a little bit too wide even. You can see kind of what we're going to do with it. Just gives you somewhere to pass your wires, because it's a pain in the butt to try to handle so many different things all at the same time. So you can just slip these through underneath. And if you have problems feeding them, just do one at a time. Then they'll go super easy, just like that. They'll go super easy, just like what I'm doing. Now at some point we'll have to probably try to sync up these ESCs to make sure they're all kind of starting and stopping at the same points on the throttle output. And we'll probably do that all on the same channel before we separate them out for differential thrust and things of the sort. Okay, so you see this little pocket back here? You can kind of tuck these into that pocket, and then the wires just escape as necessary. Okay, so pretty straightforward application there. Not a lot of room for glue surface there, guys. I would really have liked to see some bolts or some screws or something. That's very disappointing, in fact. But whatever. What are you going to do? I could talk about it some more. I'm not going to do that. Alright, so when I use this mucilage stuff, I prefer to use a Q-tip to spread it out. And that sometimes works great, and other times it doesn't. But you just kind of have to be prepared to deal with it if it's messy. And so I recommend having some kicker nearby and a cloth, okay? And what you're going to do with this is you're going to be able to cut the adhesive qualities chemically if you need to. But hopefully you don't need to. The other thing I always have is some sort of a starter stick. And you actually take this stick and you'll dive it into the glue. And that's going to get it started for you. Because this stuff, like I said, it kind of dries out. Well, what you can do is you can get in there, kind of get down to where you can feel the stick inside there, and just get it started. Okay. You'd be amazed how well that works, because I've never not been able to get this stuff started. And then basically you can just set that down, and you will have more or less some fresh stuff coming out. Okay. So luckily this is a pretty easy surface because it's not complicated. So I'm just going to squeeze it in there. Just be careful you don't have it all go out here, because this ultrasonic weld is where it broke, which is how it got the name pops in your hand on your mouth. I actually have that on video. I'm sure some of you remember seeing it and laughing loudly because it just went everywhere. And I think it was a fairly new bottle too. So I've learned it's just like the toothpaste. You kind of gotta deal with it, you know. So now I'm gonna go ahead and glue this little section down here too. Try to avoid the wires, just so it's not a huge mess. But I would say that being sparing on this glue is probably a bit of a waste of time. It's cheap. It does go bad, so just use it. So I'm going to put this here. Then I'm going to grab my, whoops, I already have it here. Blends in with the foam. Now I'm going to take and spread this stuff. And you're probably thinking, well, why don't you just stick it together? Well, because if you don't spread it, it kind of like almost activates the glue. It's weird. You'd have to use it a few times to get what I'm saying. Or just take my word for it, which is fine if you want to. If you don't want to, that's also fine. Just you spread it out like this. And what's going to happen is this glue will be halfway sticky already. Okay. And then I'm actually going to take a little bit of this product out. I'm going to take it over to the edges. And then it gets stringy, and that's exactly what you want to see. And then drop that down. And then you see these wires here. We're just going to tuck those into the channel where we'd like them to exit from the nacelle. Let's try. I'd really like the silicone to make the transition for us instead of the solder joint there, guys. I just don't think we're going to have enough cable length if we do that. Okay, so now we can just go ahead and force this into position. Okay, so it's where it needs to be. Oh crap. It's not where it needs to be. It needs to be forward a little bit. But my wires are fighting me. And you see how that stuff strings up like that? That's actually a good thing. You want that to happen. Man, that solder joint is right where it's going to be bending. It's about the least desirable place to have that happen. Okay, so this is where the kit earns its low price point, is things like that, because it didn't fit very good, but it does technically get in there. You just got to work for it. And pull it, and then push it, and then pull it, and then push it. And it's pretty much there. Okay? Don't mind this, is just taped on. So now once you have it where you want it, you'll want to take either the clean one or the one that you've used a little bit. Doesn't matter. and you're going to spin it. And this is actually going to pick up the residue while you can. Okay? See how it's pulling it out of the joint? Because this stuff will kind of foam up over the next couple of hours. And so you'll end up with this like kind of nasty, gluey mess. But it will be as though they are the same piece of foam. You think I'm exaggerating? I'm not. Okay, so you see these wires? The 3 silicone wires. Now you can manipulate those into a nice relaxed position. Okay, get them flat. You're going to have to fight with these wires a lot if you don't get them neat now. So get them neat now if you can. Okay. And if you really want to make life easy, I suppose I'll put that back on in a minute. One thing you can do that's a nice trick, now that that thing's glued in, you don't have to have that tape in the way. One thing you can do, you just go ahead and lay this flat. You can actually lay a little bed of CA down and then some kicker. That'll hold those wires in place. You can also put that pops in your hand, not in your mouth, down, and it will make a nice little sticky pad for it. Or you can just do a piece of tape, because there is a recess. This is deep, and it doesn't fill the whole recess here, okay? So I think we're good right there. I might go ahead and do a little teeny bit of the glue in the pocket. You don't want to go totally crazy, because this stuff actually gets pretty hard over time. In the next few years, if you would have to replace something, you don't want it to like rip your wires. Okay, so we're not going to go nuts with that, but we want just a little bit there. Okay. Plus, when we come in to do the LEDs and stuff, we'll probably go ahead and tap power at some point from these type of areas. Alright, so believe it or not, that one's basically done. Now we've got those little pieces of plastic covering that can go over that, but we're not going to mess with those at all yet. Okay. Sort of reluctant to put some glue down here, just for the simple fact that I'm not sure how the rest of the other nacelle is going to work out. But I got to get a little something in there because it's annoying having these wires constantly tripping over each other. So I'm just going to do a little bit of glue there. And this stuff will get exceptionally tacky if you let it sit for a minute or two. I've heard people use the terminology cook, and I'm one of them. Because I think of it like a baking project. You know, it's like a chemical reaction happening. It's not just drying out or anything like that, you know. Okay, so now that we have that tight, we go ahead and slip those in. Should be pretty simple to get those through. Now we can take our little tape thing back and just stick it back over this. It'll keep this stuff from falling out totally. There's our 3 wires. Gotta kind of pull these things out. There's just a lot of stuff happening in this tight spot, generally. Okay, good. Now I haven't had a problem with the mold release or this nice shiny finish coming off of this plane when I have used tape on it yet, but you may not be so lucky, so just be sparing where you put it. Make sure it's somewhere that you can tolerate having a little bit of a mar in the finish, meaning this nice glossy finish may actually be compromised somewhat, so just be aware of it. Okay, so we're going to do the exact same thing here. Now, I don't know if you guys remember from the unboxing, but one thing I found about this plane that was a little strange to me is that this wooden spar doesn't seem to really stop it from bending, which I thought was very weird because it's a wooden spar. It shouldn't really bend. So I had thought about trying to do some thin CA and let it soak in there, but then I'm just like thinking it's going to be way too brittle. I haven't decided. If you guys got any good ideas on that, put in the comments. Give it a shot. Might give it a shot. Probably won't, but might. Okay, so we're just going to glue meow and meow. We'll glue a little bit meow. Then we'll hang those wires upside down so we can get the rest of the surface. Let that cook for just a minute. Try not to get that on your countertops. I know how to get it off if you need to. Just use some kicker. It'll come right off. Okay, I'm going to go to a clean one. A clean Q-tip tip. Now this stuff, it doesn't look like much, but it is extremely strong. And especially right now, it doesn't look like much. But it's just like, it's probably, I would say that between this and CA, the CA is probably weaker. Because the CA gets a little brittle, as you all know. This stuff doesn't. It stays somewhat rubbery, not totally rubbery. Same problem I had on the last one. It's wanting to exit the nacelle right near that solder joint, and I don't like that because that's the point you don't want to be putting pressure on. That's annoying. Okay, so now you'll just stick this into the recess and then pull it and then push it. And pull it and then push it. Okay. Oh yeah. We're getting there. This one's tried to release a little bit. As a result, I'm going to tape it. You notice I make a big piece of tape there. That's because I want to have a nice tail to release it with. I don't want to fight it, you know. Just push that down tight. This is just temporary. It's gonna come off, obviously. Okay, we'll do the exact same thing here now. After we take off the excess glue. Looks like this one maybe isn't quite as bad as the first one in terms of excess glue. Yeah, this one maybe isn't quite as bad. Now, if you get this glue on a spot on the plane that's painted, and you try to use kicker to peel it off, what's going to happen is that the kicker will... I got a little bit of glue spread up too high. We'll use a clean one now. You run the risk of actually pulling off the finish, so just be aware of that. So you'll want to be especially careful if you're gluing something on in an area, especially that rubbery Chinese acrylic paint that they like to use on these Chinese models. They'll use them as a base color usually. It doesn't flake off. It comes off like rubbery chunks of whatever goo they've got in there. Okay, so I'm pushing that down super tight now. Nice. Okay, so we got that held down. We got this one held down. We'll just kind of... Gosh, that's... Doesn't seem like it's held down tight enough, though. It's held down pretty good. I'm going to see if I can put a clamp on it. I had a similar problem when I put the wing box in. Well, not the wing box. The wing root into the wing box on the Airbus. I want to see if I can get one of these small clamps on here These little things are nice. I don't know if they're going to be big enough though. And I'm a little nervous that it's going to be too much PSI. It's going to damage something. And you don't want to rub this into anything. Ah, dang it, I don't think that's going to reach. I need a bigger one. And that glue is setting up. It's not going to set up super fast. And yes, you could use epoxy if you're into that sort of punishment. I say that just as a joke, guys. If you like epoxy, go for it. I've got tons of epoxy back here. You'll notice I'm not using it, because what happens the first time you drag a nacelle on the ground? Bye-bye nacelle. It's garbage now. If you go ahead and use this mucilage, you have a fighting chance of maybe getting it back. Plus, epoxy's heavy. Might be using some epoxy to coat this later on the bottom of the nacelles. I haven't decided yet though. Okay, these are quite a little bit bigger. Oh man, that's got a big mar in it. I'm going to put some tape over this to make it flat. Okay, just double that up to make it flatter, because there's a big mar in my finish. Because I don't want to leave a big bite mark in this thing. Okay, that's not going to work. Dang it. Not a big deal, but it's just mostly annoying. Sorry to waste your time, guys. Now you know. The nacelle's too weak to grab on there. Okay, so what's the recourse? How do you deal with that now? Let's look at it first and make sure we're not missing anything. We come back in with CA and fill that gap. Give it a little bit of more immediate hold. That does look pretty cool. Kind of wish that there was that exhaust vent shooting out the back, but I don't have that on my Supreme Hobbies ones either. They actually were supposed to come with a decorative one, but mine never came with it. So, not really sure what happened there. There's probably like communication broke down in the Chinese plant. I'm just tugging on these wires now. Try to get them to where they need to be. You know what I might do? I might actually try to tape this here. See if I can do that. Large surface area. Pull it tight, push it down, keep far away from the decal and the paint. That actually held it tight. Remember, the key on stuff like this is the bigger the surface area, the more you can pull without damaging the finish. And then keep away from painted surfaces and decals. Unless, of course, you want to remove the decal. That actually did work pretty good. So, okay. I knew we'd come up with something. Now let's flip it back over and get those wires managed neatly. So now, I don't plan on covering this permanently until I have flaps done and lights. Now that doesn't mean I'm not going to have it covered. I'll probably end up just putting a piece of clear tape over it. Yeah, I might do some vinyl electrical tape or something like that. Or you know what? You know what I'll do? This is what I should have said first. I'm going to take a piece of paper and I'm going to tape the piece of paper in there. And that will give us a white appearance. But then I'll just cut that, I'll trim the piece of paper to fit. It'll be lighter. And then I can just throw it away when I'm done. Unless you had a white masking tape, of course you could do the same thing. I've never found a white masking tape. Sure, somebody has. We've got painters out there that watch this channel. I'm sure you guys have run into white masking tape. Okay, so that's held down pretty good. In fact, I'm curious to try that. I'm gonna go get a piece of paper. Alright guys, so we're getting close to the end of this video, which is going to be the nacelle install. Just keeping in mind we're going to have to wire these up still. Now, if you want the real cheat technique, you'll take this little kit right here. You'll lay these things onto a piece of gray paper and you'll photocopy it in your all-in-one printer, and then you can cut these out exactly. But I don't care that much. I'm just going to kind of rough cut them. This is just going to cover it up temporarily. Okay. You see, that's going to work great, guys. It's going to be plenty good for what we're doing in a temporary fashion. So we'll just cut those like that. Blammo whammo, ready to go. We can tape that down with just a piece of regular tape. Could stand to be a little bit longer. But you guys get the idea. That's basically what I'm going to do. It's going to cover up the red wires. And then when I'm ready to do a permanent final job, then I'll go ahead and break out that plastic stuff that came with it. So there's still a couple other steps that are going to have to happen too, so I don't want to totally step on myself. This side I could actually tape down. Look at that, that's pretty cool. But this side's taped down to dry, so that'll work fine as a means to an end. So what we'll probably do is we'll pause it here. I'll get the other side done, and then I'll come back and show you how this goes together. Alright guys, so we're back. Got all the nacelles taped down. I wanted to show you one step I did when I was done kind of sticking these nacelles on. I pulled a cross piece of tape on each of these, and that pulls up on the nacelle on the nose. Okay, and then I just made sure that everything was stuck down on the back, and then I trimmed my pieces of paper for when we're ready for it, which we're not. So right now, the next thing that has to be done is we have to get some wedges cut for these things so that they can be properly aligned with the plane. Because right now, if you were to glue those on, then they would actually be, instead of aligning like with the vertical stabilizer, they're like this. I'm pretty sure that's not correct. So my next step is to kind of figure out what size wedge I need to get those filled in. And we're going to do that while we let all the rest of this stuff set up the glue. But now that I sit and say that out loud, I realize it's going to be a lot easier to do when it's actually mounted. So you know what? We'll abandon that plan for the moment. We'll come right back to that here shortly. And I had actually thought about the idea of trimming this, and then that can seat into there tightly. But again, I'm not 100% certain. We do have to put the control arms on, so maybe we'll do that next while we're kind of in this project. The wings, that is. And these are supposed to be glued on. I don't suspect this is going to be an especially challenging part. Okay, so we got these. These are all the same. We got this style of clevis for the servos. Man, those threads are horrible. Look at the threads, guys. They're like barely threads. I don't know if you guys can see that, but kind of hard to see what's not there, right? So anyway, there's a couple that are a little bit longer, it looks like. Then there's one that's shorter, which is not generally the best thing, since that means there should be two on the elevator and then one for each aileron, which it looks like I might have got shorted. That's always exciting, unless it fell out somewhere. That's not frustrating at all. I'm going to check the manual and just double check on that. There might be a different way for doing the wings. Okay, so after looking at the drawing, it looks like this one's probably for the nose gear, and these two are very likely going to be what would be intended to be used for the ailerons, because the elevators already have the linkages coming out the plane. So my mistake there, guys. Sorry about that. So the way these work is super nice. They're just a clip-in style. So it's got a tooth that catches and then they snap as they go in. So the control arm will actually point in. Then I usually use glue on these a little bit. You don't have to go too crazy on the glue because it's redundant. The clips are actually what's going to hold it in. But I just like the extra added layer of security if the clip would fail. You're still going to have some retention with the glue. So spread that around, slip that in, and it doesn't quite totally fit. Now there's a tooth and I want the teeth to go a certain way, so let's just, yep. Okay, so we got that through. And we'll do that on both sides real quick. Okay, so now come back in when you're done getting those things seated, and you can use the Q-tip to take off any excess mucilage, if that's the type of glue you used. If you use CA or whatever, I don't think you'll probably have to do anything of the sort, because CA is a little easier to control. You don't have to have the wing upside down. It's just the easiest way to keep from damaging stuff right now. Sorry, I had you guys way out of focus there. Well, anyway, so we come back on this video series. We'll be finishing up the wing, probably covering up the wires, and then we're going to get the receiver plugged in, start doing a little bit of setup. Come back for more, guys. This is going to be a pretty fun project, I think, and there's a lot more left, so hope you'll come and be part of it. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and also check the links below. Help support the channel and buy from those links.